I'm trying to find a nice passive way to make blueberry bagels where hands-on activity is minimal and time does most of the work. I think I might be onto something. This is going to be another small-scale recipe based on 100 grams of flour. Last video I did a fun little experiment with brioche bread, link at the end of the video if I remember. I'll start out by weighing 1.8 grams of yeast and placing that in the mixing bowl. I'm aiming for a little less than 2% yeast in terms of baker's percentage. Then I'm just going to dump 60 grams of frozen blueberries straight in on top of the yeast. I'm not too sure about how much sugar to add. I'll go with 20 grams, then 2 grams of salt, finally 100 grams of flour to top it off. By the way, the reason I have two different types of flour is because one was on sale one week and the other was on sale another week. You might also be wondering what I'm going to do now with this bowl of layered bagel ingredients. Nothing. It's going in the fridge overnight just like this. The next morning, I take it out of the fridge. Looks like the blueberries didn't release as much water as I thought they would, so the yeast is still dry. The goal was to have the sugar pull the water out via osmosis, but I don't think they thawed out completely. I put the bowl in the oven with the light on to speed up the thawing process. A couple hours later, more juice has come out of the blueberries, but there is still some dry yeast. My hope was the yeast would have been hydrated as soon as I pulled it out in the fridge in the morning, but not active yet because of being cold and covered in sugar. Then I would have been able to start mixing this together first thing in the morning. What I am trying to do is get the blueberries kind of mashed up and the moisture evenly distributed. Having it mixed up like this seems to help pull even more water out of the blueberries. An hour later, I think by now the water has soaked up as much water out of these blueberries as it's going to. I've seen other recipes where they cook the blueberries down and essentially have to add back the water that they boiled off. This method relies on flour to pull the water out of the blueberries like a sponge to hydrate itself. And the drier the sponge, the more water it can absorb. So that's why I've waited until now to add enough water to bring the dough up to a proper hydration. I put it on my scale and attempt to add water 5 grams at a time until it makes a stiff dough. Bagel dough has a relatively low hydration, like 55-60%. I knew that the water in the 60 grams of blueberries that I used would get the hydration to something a bit short of that. So now, in theory, I can fine-tune the dough by adding water a little bit at a time to get it exactly how I want it. I end up adding 15 grams at once at the end for a total of 25 grams of extra water. That was a mistake that I could have easily avoided by scooping in a teaspoon at a time. I could add a little more flour, but I think this is acceptable. Barely. The nice thing about this method is after all this time, there is no completely dry flour left to fight with. Having it partially hydrated seems to let it absorb the additional water more readily. After 30 minutes of letting it rest in the bowl, I do a circular stretch and fold. Kind of awkward with such a small dough ball. I've used this method with sourdough blueberry bagels and they turned out pretty good, but I wanted to try with regular yeast because the timing is just more convenient for the sake of filming. I do the same type of fold again after 20 minutes of letting it rest. This process of stretching and folding and resting is strengthening the gluten to provide necessary structure to the dough. After I'm finished with that, I put it in the oven with the light on for an hour. After an hour, I take it out and pinch the dough ball in half. I fold each half the same way I did the big dough ball. I set them on a tea towel and cover them for 20 minutes. It would have been a good idea to put some flour on this tea towel, but they come off without too much trouble. I poke holes through the center and stretch. If you ever have bagels stretch out this easily, you probably use too much water, like I did. When I get the hydration how I want it, I usually have to let them rest a few minutes between stretches. There's only so much you can stretch dough at any one time before it tears, and letting it rest relaxes the dough so you can stretch it further. I covered them and set a timer for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I put the water on the burner to bring to a boil and preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. It occurred to me afterward that I totally forgot to add honey to the water. I thought the bagels looked kind of dull when they came out of the oven, and maybe that's why. Once the water's boiling, I go to drop the bagels in. Oh no, the bagels are stuck to the towel. I can release them by just pouring a little water over them. They're going to get wet anyway. After they are in there for 1 minute, I flip them over and let them boil on the other side for another minute. Usually I have a wire rack set up, but the towel will do just fine. After a minute or two, I put them on the baking sheet and place them in the oven for 20 minutes. Well, the one on the left looks okay. The right one not so much. I didn't divide these very evenly, and in addition to being smaller, the right one looks like it got more of the blueberries, and I think that's kind of throwing off its form. Like I mentioned, the crust doesn't look quite right. I think that's because I forgot to add any kind of sugar to the boil water, but maybe the excessive hydration has something to do with it too. I think I'm going to stick to some variation of this method of making blueberry bagels most of the time. I'll use the method where you cook down the blueberries if I ever want to make them in less than 12 hours. Low hydration doughs can be frustrating to make. There's always that last bit of dry flour that just won't mix in. This way, it's like you're mixing a little bit of water into a bunch of flour versus trying to cram a bunch of flour into a small amount of water, if that makes any sense. It does in my head. I know I didn't demonstrate this very well because I put too much water in anyway, but trust me, bro, in previous attempts where I ended up with proper looking bagel dough, that little bit of extra water mixes in pretty quickly and evenly. Oh yeah, I think I put too much sugar in here. They are way sweeter than any bagel I've ever had. I think 5 or 10 grams would have been fine.